that camp. So that means we're already 6 months in. So you got maybe another 6 to 12 maximum. And then I think you're starting to move up. But you're going to get, if I'm right, you're going to get amazing buying opportunities in crypto. And I think the biggest story is that this week has been a minefield for Bitcoin because all the big tech companies are reporting, right? So we saw earlier this week Microsoft and Google. Then yesterday we saw Facebook. Today we're seeing Apple and Amazon report, which Apple's the biggest market cap company in the world, really. So this one today is the big one. If Apple can beat and Amazon, if they're both up tomorrow, look for Bitcoin to have a beautiful move to the upside. On the other hand, if they're down, watch out below. So I think it's important for us to recognize that the earnings from these companies, you're right, it's a very short snapshot of in time. But the bottom line is it will perpetuate the bearish market in the stock market and cause a breakdown that could last for a longer period. And that's why you actually have to pay attention to it. On the other side of the coin, you mentioned the dollar, right? The dollar has been soaring. Trend line you do, which is this level going all the way back to 2016. And that now the positive here is that the dollar is at resistance. So I do think the dollar is set up for a pullback. So that could be a small positive for not only Bitcoin and cryptos, but also for, metals as well, gold and silver and so forth. So again, you are at resistance. Look for a pullback in the dollar. The biggest fear, again, I have in the short term is that Apple report. Apple today is up a little bit going into earnings. This stock hasn't corrected that much. And that's what's the biggest fear for me is that when you have a company that makes up, 10% of the S&P 500 and more of the NASDAQ 100, it has a major sway on the overall market. And we know that the tech stocks are what wags essentially the tail, which is crypto right now. So I think that's what investors have to be aware of. If Bitcoin, if we can get through this report today, then I would almost say you're going to get a rally in cryptocurrencies over the next week or so, even irregardless of the Fed, even forgetting about the Fed, because everyone knows that the Fed is going to raise by 50 basis points. That's already baked in. What we're fearful of is that this economy, which now we see that GDP print, which is a negative, are we seeing the beginning of a recession? And this is the scariest thing of all for investors is that, are we going to get a recession with high inflation? That's the worst case of all. It's called stagflation. And it's where, again, you have high inflation, but you have a recession. Usually recession, when you have inflation, it coincides with expansionary periods. And then people are making more money at their jobs so they can afford the inflation. Yeah. If we see a recession with inflation, what is the Fed going to do? Can they print another $5 trillion? I don't think so. So far it's holding. So, I mean, if you want to take it from the bullish case for Bitcoin is that you need to see it hold this lower trend line. As long as it does that, it's at support, and support should give it a lift up. If it breaks this line, that's where I would start to get very, very nervous, where you're going to get a bigger leg down, because the bigger pattern here, remember, the bigger pattern, and this is just the facts, right? This down move with this sideways consolidation is a bear flag formation. So you need this to break. You need this to negate that flag pattern. You need it to hold this support right here. And then you need it to trade up in this range. And once that happens, then it's all systems go. Green lights flashing. Then Bitcoin can go back to its highs. Now, currently, it's right around 50,000, right? It is an upsloping trend line, so if it takes a month, it might be at 51 or 52,000, but right now it's currently at 50,000, which is interesting because that's the key even number as well. So we always focus on even numbers as technical traders as being psychological levels. So a break above 50,000 would get people really bullish, get them buying into Bitcoin again. So what I think could be happening is that Powell's going to look at that GDP number and say, okay, listen, I'm going to raise 50 basis points because he's already told the market he's going to do that. But I think if you're a Bitcoin investor or a stock investor, what you want to see is not as hawkish chatter. So hopefully he's saying, look at this GDP. We might be getting close to a recession. I can't raise as aggressively as I wanted to do. And if he just talks a little bit less hawkishly, the markets as a whole will have a big, big rally behind him. You'll see yields start to come down a little bit from this near 3% level on the 10-year. And that would be a buy signal near term for stocks. Powell's wish book, right? His dream book, it would be to bring the stock market down as much as possible, which will bring inflation down because people have less money to spend, without causing a recession, right? So the big issue is, imagine if he causes a recession and it turns into a major recession like 2008 and 2009, and you see unemployment go to 12 or 15%. That would be a catastrophic event for him. So his goal is to bring the stock market down without causing a recession. I do wonder what excuse he's going to make for the GDP number going negative. Is it going to be, oh, it was during Omicron, these are backwards looking numbers, so it doesn't really matter? I mean, we don't know what he's going to say, but I could see that being kind of the excuse that he uses to still stay hawkish. I mean, basically, I'm going to tell you this. If Apple and Amazon disappoint, it's getting there tomorrow. I mean, it's going to get there because, again, they miss, and you see Apple down 5%. Remember, we're talking about 20% of the NASDAQ 100. So if you have Apple down 5% and Amazon down 5%, you're probably getting it down there anyways. Now, if Apple and Amazon don't disappoint, then you won't see this level for a while. And I think the key is that it's going to happen eventually. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of when.
Saying that the QQQ or the NASDAQ is eventually going to go down by another 5%.
Oh, at least. In all fairness, I'll go on record in saying the NASDAQ's eventually going to go down by another 20%. Probably in the next 12 months. So, I mean, there's a lot of downside left here. And keep in mind what's going on, right? So you had this, and let's look at the S&P chart, because I think it's clearer here, is you had this move up from the COVID lows, which was ridiculous. And this was all on steroids, right? This was the market getting just obliterated with money from the government, checks to Americans, the Federal Reserve printing the money. And now the Fed's taking that all away and the government can't pass any new stimulus, right? So now you're getting this sucked out and you really probably are headed back on the S&P back down here, which is another 20% on the S&P back to the pre-COVID highs. And again, think about it logically. They stimulated, they pumped money in, now they're pulling it out. The markets have no place to go but eventually down. You'll get great bounces, great trading opportunities, but down it goes. Yeah, so risk off 3 months out. Today, very, very short term, watch that Apple report, watch that Amazon report. You'll see Bitcoin immediately react to that report. Midterm, I do think the Bitcoin chart will trade lower. Long-term, huge rally. Once you get this hiking out of the way, once inflation becomes more sticky and doesn't go away, and the Fed can't do anything about it, Bitcoin is the place to go. 500, $1 million, 5 years out, 10 years out, whatever it is. Huge bull long term, but you got to see a flush out first. We got to get this out of the system first. I think that if you just look at past cycles, we talk about 12 to 18 months. So from the high in November, 12 to 18 months out is usually where you make the low. And then it takes a little while longer for it to grind back and take out the highs. So I'd be in that camp. So that means we're already 6 months in. So you got maybe another 6 to 12 maximum. And then I think you're starting to move up. But you're going to get, if I'm right, you're going to get amazing buying opportunities in crypto.
Listen, every time we need a psychologist session, or we're just about to go for a psychologist session, we'll call you so you can depress us. And then when we go to the psychologist, we've got something to talk about. So I've got a psychologist session at 5:30, which is in a couple of minutes. So now I feel depressed, and I'll go there tomorrow. I'll be fine again.
Just think long term. As long as you're long term, you're good to go, buddy.